Hello, welcome
Hey.
to the Mouth of Truth, the monthly live stream from behind the scenes of Ren, the girl with the mark. I'm Neil Osman, showrunner
I'm Kate Madison, director of episode 1 and
co-creator,
creator.
yeah, of the whole show. Happy New Year, everyone watching. I hope you had a brilliant Christmas or whatever you did for the middle of winter or summer if you're in the Southern Hemisphere.
That's true.
I hope you had a wonderful time. We are going to be speaking to the two editors of Ren Season 2 very shortly. But first, the usual production update. We are getting so close with Season 2 now, so very, very close. We're literally waiting on one last visual effects shot and the music, basically. You have probably seen, I hope you've seen, if you're watching this live stream, the preview clip that we put out just before Christmas. That is now on YouTube as well as on Patreon. That's the opening scene of Season 2. Very, very exciting. Directed by Kate, of course. So yeah, go and watch that. Just, you know, if you haven't seen that, just pause this and go away and watch that. And
No, don't pause this. This is live. You can watch it later.
Yeah, you can watch it on demand. It's fine.
You can literally do it at the same time, like everyone does for YouTube stuff.
Yeah, have it in another
Just
window.
put it on another window.
Yeah, hello Mike, good evening. Hello Myrto, Happy New Year. Hello Mark Luster, good evening, good evening. Yes, Kate's back from
I'm
the
back
dreaded
after COVID, yeah. Yay. My first COVID, so you know, COVID virgin I was.
You did very well to last that long.
I did.
Okay.
It's called Don't Go Out and Don't Do Anything.
Being a
It's been
hermit.
3 years as a hermit, and it paid off. But then I got a job and things. So
Yeah, you're all right now, or I hope so anyway.
yes, I think so. Yeah, no, I am. It is weird how like a little cough and things did persist a little bit though. But yes, the actual test and things all got cleared up pretty after like a week or so. It felt long. It was sort of persistent. But yeah, generally I wasn't too bad. I think some people have it a lot worse.
Yeah, definitely.
But I am back. We're good.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, so very close with Season 2 now, very close indeed. I'm back over at Dale's tomorrow night to do some more sound mixing. He's putting the last of the Foley and sound effects in. And then, of course, when we get the music from Rob, the fantastic Mr. Rob Westwood, who scored Season 1, once we get his music, we'll put that into the final mix and then we'll all be done. So yeah, exciting times. And Season 3, of course, is now officially in, what do I want to call it, pre-production? I'm going to call it early prep. We have a draft we're happy with. We'll continue working on it, but there's now a breakdown, there's a budget, and reaching out to people about dates, availability, early stages of just doing a bit of research for some possible locations. So that is all happening. I was even looking at the outline for Season 4 today. Just because you need to know.
Do we need to calm you down?
You need
No,
to
you do
know,
need to know.
right, where you're
You don't
going.
really need the outline, you need to know where you're going.
When you write a season, you need to have a rough idea of where you're going for the next one. So, yeah. It's all happening here at Ren HQ. Hello to, I can't say that, Krelgist?
See, I'm the worst at saying people's usernames. I'm just awful. I always cut them short as well, so I'd say Krell. But they probably would say
Krell.
it some other way. So apologies if we say them wrong. It's really hard to know.
And good evening to Helen as well, Sol herself. Excellent. Good to see you, Helen. Right, shall we get our guests in for this evening?
I think we should. Oh, that's me. I'm on
let's
production. Hold on. Okay, here we go. Let's bring them in.
Hello.
Hello.
We are joined now by Kat
Oh.
Ashenden and
I not hear
Arthur
them now?
Harrison. And I'm not hearing anyone at the moment.
I saw Arthur
us
say
okay?
hello. There we go. There we go.
Arthur. Yeah.
It was a silent hello.
It
so
was
I'm
a
trying to
silent
trick
hello.
you.
Yeah. Perfect. It's just to panic us.
How
Yeah,
you
yeah,
do-
just to scare you.
How you guys doing?
Doing really well, thank you. Yeah, really well. Kind of good to be back after Christmas. Always a little bit slow after Christmas, working off all the food that you've been eating. But yeah,
Yeah,
good to be back in the grind.
Re-energized,
Yeah.
Fantastic. So Kat edited episodes 1, 2, and 3 of season 2, and Arthur edited episode 4. So we are going to hopefully demystify the process of post-production a little bit in tonight's live stream. So let's dive straight into it, and we'll start with you, Kat. How did you get into editing?
Well, I studied film and television production all the way from college and then into university. And luckily, in university, you get to explore different roles. So I was actually more interested in the camera because I was like, oh, I get to actually film and make the setup and everything. And then as soon as I got in the cutting room, I was like, hey, hold on. Like this is how you make emotions come out. Like this is how you put it together. And even if other people would bring stuff in, I was like, okay, like I can do that. Like I can make that difference. So it was all from the interest of seeing the way that film was developing throughout my years. And then I was like, I'm going to do that for a course. And then luckily university gave me the opportunity to explore different roles. And I thought editing is definitely what I'm suited at.
Fantastic. Cool. And what about you, Arthur?
I started out wanting to be an actor, actually. I studied acting for about 10, 12 years. And then I got to the age of about 17, 18 and realised there was an awfully lot of unemployed actors out there. And I thought to myself, well, I don't want to be one of those. So how do I get around this? So I thought, if I get a job in film, like an actual skill, then I'll work with the director and I'll try and get my acting roles that way. That was kind of my plan, to kind of get in through the back door. But actually, it turned out that I kind of fell in love more with the making of film rather than being in front of the camera, and I kind of, lost that. And so I went to uni, exactly the same as Kat, and again there, I enjoyed I enjoyed the filming and everything, but I felt that me and my kind of university friends had more fun in the cutting room. And I'm a little bit of a control freak, and and so I like to be able to try different things and that, and I just editing just kind of felt like it suited me. And so after I left uni, I kind of joined a corporate media company, and it kind of grew from there.
Cool.
Yeah.
And by the way, anyone out there watching, if you have questions for Kat and Arthur, just pop them in the chat, and we will post them.
We'll do our best, yeah.
Yeah, we will. So a lot of people might think that editing is just a case of, you cut out the bits where the actors get their lines wrong. There is a lot more to it than that, isn't there? How would you describe it? Who wants to take that one first? Arthur, maybe? Arthur's looking keen.
Arthur go first. Yeah, I answered the first before.
It's a really big question. Well, editing it's basically you structuring the story. And I think that's the key thing. You kind of, you're kind of in control of directing where the audience's emotions go. You can cut a scene, any scene, a million different ways. And if you focus the camera on one character, that's what our audience will be focusing on and feeling like they should be focusing on. Whereas you could cut it a different way and focus on a different character. And so editing is about, I see it as kind of like taking all these amazing tools and kind of ingredients that the camera department, the DOP, the script writer's giving you, and then putting it together and kind of shaping it in the way that the director, showrunner or producer wants, basically. Did that make sense? I don't know if that made sense or not.
That's a good answer. Anything to add to that, Kat?
No, exactly the same. It's playing with the timing and emotion of things. Like they've shot all these things. There's probably more coverage in some sessions where then we're probably not going to use it anyway, but when it's there, we're just like, okay, I could play with this thing, put this in, and then instantly it's different feeling. And as much as the script gives guidelines to different things, it's then when you're with the director and editing it, you'll realize, actually, if I use this shot, I would achieve what I wanted in the script, or if I do this shot, this might achieve something better that I wanted someone to hone in later on in the script. And it's all those different things that you can play with. And you always have to try and somehow make the audience forget you're cutting. Like if you could achieve that, it's almost like a win-win for everyone. So like if they're so involved in that scene, then you're thinking, oh yes, I've got the cut right.
Yeah.
What's your perspective on it, Kate, as a director? You know, what do you see the editing process as an opportunity to do?
Well, I guess similar. There's the saying that I have no idea who first said it, but that the film is made like 3 times or potentially more. I feel like there was another fourth, but like it was the written version, the one you shoot, and then the one you edit, and so what I love about editing is that you've got all these things, and then you can play even more with pacing and emphasizing certain things, and and also I guess I think the thing that I love about it, I suppose, is being able to pull little moments that don't necessarily even come from the scene or from the moment in the scene. Like you can take something from a shot from the beginning, or even like I know that when I've done bits and pieces, I've taken stuff from when action has been stopped, you know, like when you said cut and an actor's just done something or had a look and you're like, oh, that's nice, can we, when she says this line, you could grab that moment when he just looks like he just sort of his eyes drop and you can pull that, and that sort of thing is where you get those little magic moments for as a director. I get it in the edit suite where you're like, ooh, that's really nice. Can we put that there, and then things can shift and change around and stuff.
I saw Arthur nodding there about the, you know, after you've called cut and little bits. That's a trick you've done before, is it, Arthur?
Yeah, definitely. It's I kind of had the pleasure of working with an editor a few years ago, Mark Everson, who edited the Paddington films and that, and he kind of taught me always check your dailies, because there's just these little moments that you can get, you know, and they're there, and they're kind of like little hidden gems. You should always check them. And so you know, you get some hidden gems hidden there.
Yeah, that's what I love. What I don't love is realizing that I didn't get something in coverage. I do remember various season 1 stuff with Simon, who was wonderful enough to sit with me and help me edit some bits and pieces, or sort of tutor me a bit. And he'd be like, "Cool. So she looks over at him at that point. Do you have that shot?" And I'm like, "No." "Do you have this shot?" "Oh, no." It's like, so it's, no matter how much coverage you do on the day, sometimes you still miss things. Yeah. Which is why we did pickups last season. Yeah, like, there's a few things missing. Let's go pick that up. But yeah, it is really interesting playing around with stuff.
Hello, Achy Stig in the chat. You're saying fix it in post.
Yeah, that's the dreaded expression that we don't like.
Yeah,
you know, we don't like it, but we have lots of kind of cups and T-shirts that say it. So it's
absolutely,
a bit weird.
Yeah, it's a
celebrate it and hate it sometimes.
Well, consider it.
I was going to.
No, go for it.
Oh no, go on, Kate.
No,
I was just going to say.
Sorry.
No, you go. Go on.
My thing is just because we can't see each other, just so that the audience know, we can see them, they can't see us, so it's very easy to interrupt. I was just gonna say that it's quite interesting because Stig, who's in chat right now saying fix it in post, is the person that we are doing sort of fix it in post, because he's one of our stunties who is leaping around on blue screens and stuff and onto crash mats, and so we're having to chop him out and put in places and do a lot of things in post. So anyway, what were you saying, Arthur?
No, all I was going to say was, when you was talking about working with the editor, I think the big thing about editing is it's a language, and it's kind of a language in 2 ways, because we don't realize it, but there's kind of a language in how you cut up different genres. If any of you went to university when Tarantino was around, everyone wanted to cut the Tarantino way, and that's a kind of form of language. You know, if you was to take how Quentin Tarantino makes his films and stick it into Lord of the Rings, it's going to be awful. It's not going to work. because the languages don't quite. So you're almost learning a language. And the second thing is learning to kind of communicate with your director or showrunner, because a lot of the time you're kind of sitting down for the first time, or you may have just, if you're lucky enough, you've worked together a couple of times. And so you kind of have to quickly, as an editor, learn when a director likes something or doesn't like something, or if they're, how they communicate what they want. And then that kind of speeds up the process. So it's a lot of communication, a lot of hidden language.
Well, that leads on nicely to my next question, which is, of course, on Ren season 2, 4 episodes, 4 different directors, each of them with a different style of shooting, and I guess probably a different way of wanting to work with you editors as well. So would you like to talk about that? Should we start with Kat?
So yeah, I got to work obviously with 3 directors for each, one for each episode, and I've worked with one director, Johnny, the most, so I already knew like what to kind of do for him. Like as soon as you've worked with someone quite a while, you kind of know what their pattern is, what you want to do with them. And then say Kate and then Chris, totally new experience of seeing what their vision was for each. And like I say, like I've written in my notes of like trying to remember how it all went from editing. And I remember with you, Kate, you had a clear direction of what you wanted conveyed on screen, like the emotion wise, or what the context was, like not necessarily what had to be captured in the shot, but what you wanted to be conveyed across a bit with what you could capture at that time. And it felt like we played around with different placements in order to achieve that. It wasn't like I definitely need this like laid out. Like we you try this shot and try that shot, and then you'd be happy if that emotion or what you wanted in the script is then laid out for the audience. And so that was nice to play around with things. And obviously there's a chase sequence in there which I've never had experience with before.
I think we were both finding our way through that one, weren't we?
But like, how does this all piece together? And then you came in after, I was like, oh, I'm completely wrong.
Yeah, there was definitely a bit of like trying to figure out sort of, so what have we actually got? Now we've got these sort of like the fake horses and the real actors with all this real horse stuff, and trying to sort of like make all of it flow into one thing that sort of seems smooth. Was quite a challenge for all of us and stuff. Yeah, and to get the pacing and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah,
so much
and
stuff.
The amount of time we had with the horses was nothing really compared with what a day and a half, I would say, if that. Budget would,
not even. yeah. They'd spend 2 weeks probably minimum on that chase.
We had 2 days, which weren't really full days.
No,
either.
Definitely not.
So yeah, making that work and piecing that all together was. Sure was a challenge. But yeah, we got there, and I think it was really fun. It was nice actually sitting down with Kat and going through everything, and her putting up with me going, can you just tweak that, just cut that little bit, like keep going and stop there, and like taking over the edit stuff, but I think hopefully we piece things together good, and I'm really happy with what we got, so thank you very much for all that hard work.
It's all dependent on different scenes as well, like obviously each episode has different context of what's going to happen in them, and like when I was helping with Chris's edit and his direction, like Chris came to me basically with a list of like, this is how it's going to go, just do it. And I was like, oh, that's completely different to what I'm used to.
Well, he did his first cut himself, didn't he?
Yeah,
that's true.
He sent it to me, and I was like, okay, I'll do that for you. And it's almost like he knew everything he wanted out of he already, the shots he knew of, is like he didn't waste time with anything extra. He felt like on me, I don't know whether that was different on set, but it felt like he knew what shots he wanted. He wasn't going to waste time with anything else. And then he put it in, and obviously those things change when pickups and come in, so we changed a few things afterwards. But then he was like, okay, then that's, after we had a chat together, we didn't really have to finesse much. It was he just asked me, did this come across right? I'm like, yeah, completely. I get that emotion completely. And then if you 360 that's like Johnny, it's more about pacing. Like every time I've edited with him, it's all about like, because he writes a lot of stuff himself as well, so he knows about timing how to get their emotion across. And so if his episode is all about pacing for the majority, like he would get everything coverage as much as possible as he can, because he knew then he'd be like, okay, as long as there's an extra second there, that will hit the mark for me. So I hope it'll probably be interesting for everyone to see the episodes, just see how much they are all different. And I hope that comes across what I've experienced through all three of them.
Yeah.
And Arthur, you've worked with Sophie before, of course.
Yes, I was very lucky actually. Yeah, me and Sophie have worked together on 2 previous films, and so we've almost got, she's one of my favourite people to work with. We've almost got kind of a shorthand, so I was quite lucky that I was able to hit the ground running with Sophie. I really feel like the best relationships are when you complement each other, and I like you said, I think with Johnny, I love the feel and pacing of a scene, and that, whereas Sophie is a lot more into the personal detail. She's like, right, I need that character to look at that character because there's subtext there, because this means this, this, and this. And so we kind of, put it together, and it works quite well. So yeah, I was very lucky to work with Sophie, on this. So yeah. Sorry, Kat. I came in a bit.
That's good, and we've got some good questions coming in on the chat as well. So Kral says, will there be a long action scene in Ren season 2 in terms of a battle, perhaps? I don't know if battle's quite the right word, but long action scene, I think we can say yes.
Yeah, definitely.
We've talked a little bit about the horse chase already, but Johnny's episode, of course, has a particularly interesting fight scene possibly very interesting from an editing point of view, or possibly not interesting at all, because it has the appearance of one continuous shot. So you didn't have to do anything to that, Kat, right?
No, clearly, just put one shot in, it's done. No, that was a completely new experience. Like, I know, like, if, I can't remember the Wall film is it 1918? I can't remember the one. Yeah. Like, as soon as Johnny said it's going to be a one, and I was like, do you mean this kind of one? And he was like, oh yes, that kind of. I was like, okay, so as long as you tell me where this kind of cut is gonna kind of be, then I was like, okay, I know how to put that together. And obviously there's things of fight sequence that I've never done before, of like trying to, it already has a pace in the shot, so you're kind of thinking, I just have to put it in. Like, no, there's actually a lot more to it, of like, okay, I can put it in at this point, or I can put it in at this point, and will me cutting here make it smoother to this next shot, because I don't want the audience to realize that's a cut at all. And sometimes I think Johnny had to realize that, how am I going to frame it? And I suppose with you, Neil, as well, you had to realize how we're going to frame that. So when we do this swing, or we do go into this position, that's when we know that's going to be the next cut. Because from my standpoint, it felt like very seamless for like where the end point start points were, but when you put it fully together, you realize actually I could tighten it up a bit more, or maybe this could have happened to then make that more punchier. And then we realized there's probably some secret techniques we could do just to test if it could be even more impactful.
Yeah, it was definitely a challenge that Johnny threw us with that one. A fight scene on a bridge in South Wales.
An incredibly steep bridge.
Yeah, with a very steep humpback to it, so that made it interesting from a safety and action point of view, and also dealing with quite a heavy wooden cart that had to be pushed up it at one point. He wanted it to look like one continuous shot, and we filmed it in, was it about maybe 15 pieces, something like that, 10 or 15.
That's quite impressive, because I think I can spot a few, but I can't spot 15. I don't think so.
And so a lot of hiding cuts in whip pans, or going behind people's backs so the shot goes dark for a moment. Then that's so interesting to edit, because you don't have the Johnny's in the chat going, sorry, not sorry. You don't have the control that you would normally have as an editor to tighten things up in quite the same way, do you?
Yeah, I felt I was like at some points, like, because I wasn't fully immersed with the script at that point, and I was like, Johnny was like, this is what these shots should be doing, put it all together, and I was like, okay, is this supposed to be happening? Is this supposed to be happening? And then when we actually sat down and talked, and he went through everything, like, oh, okay, that's supposed to be happening, and it clicked in my head about, okay, I just need to do this to change that for you. And I think a lot of times it's semi frustrating with long shots, because you're like, you just know as editor, you're like, oh, if that was just like that, then I could do something. So it was just a fun experience to see it all laid out. But I think that's the craft of it, is like a cinematographer and a director have a lot of fun in those shots, and planning it out with the choreographers as well must be like a really fun experience.
Yeah, there's a lot of planning went into that as well. If you go back a couple of episodes on The Mouth of Truth, actually, we had Ronin Trainer on, and we talked a bit about that. And we did a lot of speed ramping too, I remember, in the edit. But that was interesting too, because at one point we sort of almost sped it all up, and then we showed that to Ronin, and he went, oh, you've lost the, it hasn't got the sort of pace and the dynamics to it as a fight anymore. So that was interesting, wasn't it?
His eye definitely guided a lot of things, because we just edited it thinking, oh, it looks fast, it looks punchy, and then he comes back saying, no, but that in real life that wouldn't happen, and then we realized, oh yeah, we got too far.
Super speedy punching.
Yeah, and then Arthur, you of course have a fight scene in your episode as well, shot in quite a different style.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. No one takes for us. There was lots of shots and lots of options, which is great in some way, because obviously you've got all these options, but also it's a little bit daunting as well, because there's many different ways you can cut that, and you want to make sure you get it right. And so that was the scene, I think, that took me and Sophie, I think, the longest, kind of getting that right. I put it together basically of how I saw it, and then we kind of fine-tuned it to get it right. So, but it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was an interesting one to shoot that as well, because that whole thing was shot in one day, and I said to Sophie beforehand, this is impossible. We can't. You just can't do this many setups in a day, but we did it.
I was going to say, when you're cutting on kind of independent productions, self-funded, fan-funded productions, you think when you're working on like the big, the Game of Thrones and the Marvels and things like that, they like literally have weeks to cut a fight scene, so to film a fight scene. Whereas, you don't have the resources unless you're massively, budgeted production. And so when you're cutting a fight scene, it's always trying to make sure that you kind of take that into account, And I normally find with fight scenes, I like them to be quite fast, because then you can kind of cut around bits where you weren't able to get the right angle of someone being hit. So, that's what we tried to employ with our fight scene. Very fast, furious, and so and obviously without going into it, the fight scene means a lot for one of the characters' developments as well, so we had to kind of put that into the scene as well.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than a fight scene where you just kind of switch off because you don't nothing's going on with the characters, or it's not moving the story forward.
It's also hard with two characters. If you have more than one, you see this a lot in, I think Return of the Jedi is a great example of this, where when you have effectively two protagonists fighting, you kind of have to have the same beats, because the idea is it's 2 fights or 3 fights or 4 fights, but it's actually kind of one battle you're cutting. And so if you've got one of your protagonists getting beaten up, but the other protagonist is doing really, really well, it kind of confuses the audience. So what you have to do is you have to find points in the fight where both are almost at the same stage. They both look like they're going to lose. They're both kind of, making a comeback. And kind of cut them simultaneously with each other. And that's, I think, the challenge. Hopefully we did that okay. Hopefully we did.
Yeah, definitely. I really like that fight. I love how that turned out. So what's there is another question. Nice. Yeah, there is another question from Mike. But actually, just before I ask that, I want to, because it links on. We've been talking about action scenes. Are they harder, or are there quiet little dialogue scenes harder in terms of editing? What do you think? Cat's
You will
looking
take that
at-
one first, Kat?
You go first, I'll have a think.
I will say it depends on the director. You normally find that directors, producers, showrunners, whoever you're working with, they tend to have a knack at being really good at certain styles. And so it always depends on the director, because the director's very good at shooting those intimate scenes. They're easy. You can see it. She's got the performances. She's got the actors to hit the beats, he or she, to hit the beats you need. Whereas if you don't have all the beats, you've kind of got to make it up. If the whole point is that one of the characters is going through a real anguish, scene, and you haven't got one shot of them being really angry, you've kind of got to then make that up. So I think it depends on the director. I would say action scenes are harder, really, because I feel like, there's so many different ways you can take an action scene. And so, that for me is harder. For me, getting it right for the director, I think is harder than an emotional scene.
Yeah, I think for experience wise, for me, like that was my first fight scene cutting together. And so I already didn't have the knowledge of like what would be the best direction for this, because I knew emotional scenes, like the reason I loved editing is because you can make something feel so emotional. All you have to do is put some pauses or cut really quickly or bring this shot on, and then instantly you change the dynamic. And so fight sequence, it's kind of like visually you're looking and thinking, right, I'm very literal sometimes at editing, like, right, that hand's not the right way. So initially in the edit, I'm like, well, if I could just cut here, then the hand will be the right way placing in the next shot. And so I was literally doing it literally. I'm like, okay, that makes sense in my head because the direction's right. But then when we went back to it, I think we went, okay, that needs to be faster for the sake of it needs to feel more impactful, or this needs to be longer for the sake of this character's going through something. And so I would have to sometimes let go of the not continuity, but the way it felt in my head of like this matches. And so yes, I think the fight sequence has a lot more to it for you to consider, because as much as you probably just focusing on the way it's all connecting and hopefully what the director wanted, it's also like it's a part of the story. So if it's not landing the story points you want, then you have to rethink everything again sometimes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Kral's saying in the chat, director for I think they're saying it's the hardest thing for a director is dialogue, and for editors it's action.
Well, I've had people just write they fight. Well, just giving us that going, they fight. I'm like, oh, okay, that's it. Yeah, we cut together a fight. That's it. So yeah.
Yeah. There's a little bit of that in the season 3 script at the moment. It needs So Mike has asked, this is an interesting question, how much has editing changed from the standard definition era to today's 4K era?
I know right off the bat, yeah, go on. Technically, I know already what you can say.
Do you mean technically?
Yeah.
Well,
is that what we mean, kind of technically?
I guess
or
how is it? I suppose he probably means how has it changed for you guys? Like if you've has, I suppose, editing changed, or is it just technical stuff? I suppose the editing itself is the same, or is the style changed?
Well, there's definitely
style. Yeah.
I mean, there's the style. There's resolution. Well, there's devices, isn't it? It's the wide range of devices where someone could watch it in 4K on a huge screen or on a tiny little phone, which wasn't the case 10 years ago. Yeah,
I know. I get lots of people saying, "Well, it's 4K, right? We can zoom in," and I'm like, calm down. That's not 4K anymore.
Yeah. We definitely did that in the horse thing at one point. I was like, I shot too wide, quick.
Yeah, we literally had to do a pass at the SCN and just make sure the scale doesn't go above this, because it's going to look terrible.
It's a double-edged sword, because if with 4K, obviously you can see more, And so obviously, you know, you can see more of what's going on, and so you have to be very careful. Things have to look very real, but at the same time, because you've got more pixels, you can get away with things. This is less to do with resolution and more about the capabilities of the cameras. You can speed cameras up now, whereas years ago, not every camera had a capability of being shot in, different frames, 50 frames, 60 frames. And so you could just get a fight that was shot in 25 frames or 24 frames. And that makes it difficult, because then if you want to speed it up to add impact, you're going to see it. You're going to see it. And so I think, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, really. I think technology has allowed us to try more, but we can't get away with as much as we used to, I think.
Also, we need larger hard drive spaces now.
Yes, yeah, massive, yes.
Oh, the
yeah,
bane of hard drives.
Yeah. If you know any editors for Christmas, a hard drive. We always need hard drives. We always need them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in style, in terms of styles are always changing in terms of editing. It all depends on what's popular. I always go back to Tarantino, because I was at university when just at kind of the end of what I call the Tarantino era, where if you were a film student, you had to love Tarantino. In fact, it didn't matter if you didn't know anyone else. It had to be Tarantino, because that's what everyone loved. And then what would happen is you would get same with Guy Ritchie. I don't know if you've seen Snatch or Lock, Stock. Those styles were really prevalent for a while, and you kind of had to go with it. Whereas now we're kind of more into the more subtle kind of TV, the golden age of television, The Sopranos, Game of Thrones, where you can be a bit slower. You can really take your time. You can, you can play with things. You can do less, rather than having it all fast and action packed and a great music track underneath. You can kind of, a bit more personal, I think now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we've talked about action scenes being difficult, but what were the other scenes in this season of Ren that were challenging from an editing point of view? Are there any that spring to mind without giving away too much?
I think we had to obviously add pickups along the way when we realised that key parts of the script weren't highlighted as much as we wanted to, like certain aspects which would tell the story. When you got them pickups, then we had to bring them back in. And so I know there's a montage sequence in episode 2, and we had initially just to be like, oh, they're traveling somewhere. And then I think when we added more pickups, we thought actually we use these shots elsewhere, or we can change these shots up to tell something different, or to at least add something to it. So there was definitely a case of like, is this the right tone, or is this the right story at this moment, or is this the right place to put that moment? Because the montage, I think, was not, it was longer at one point, and then we got shorter, and then I think we got a bit longer again, so it was a bit back and forth. But it was like, okay, this, because as soon as the pickup shots and everything came in and they hit those moments you wanted, it's almost like, does these other things need to be there now, because it's almost like doubling down on the emotion when actually that should be here at this moment in the edit. And so that was the kind of thing of when you've put already one edit down thinking you've got the right emotion, and then you come back to think, actually no, like in context of like now our season 3 you're thinking actually I need to change that up. And so that was the bit of like just rejigging your head a bit around it. And it's interesting that a montage actually can have a bit of an impact with it as well.
Yeah.
What about for you, Arthur?
Well, we had another problem. Am I allowed to say what location? Where?
Yeah.
I'd love to talk about the location and the detail that went in, but am I okay to talk about that?
Yeah, you can say.
Yeah, I just want to make sure before I, we were quite spoiled, me and Sophie, because we had a beautifully crafted location, whereas Kat, I think you had lots of different locations. We had this one beautifully crafted location. It looked amazing. It looked absolutely stunning. The detail was, and so believe it or not, the hard thing for myself and Sophie was, I think, you want to include everything. You've got all of these great background characters. You've got all of all of these trinkets. It's a marketplace, and everything was so well designed. And I think it's it's testament, I think, to yourself, Neil, and yourself, Kate, and what you've put together here, because the location looks amazing, and it's hard because when you get the opportunity, especially with kind of, again, when you're not working on the big budget production, when you're working on independent, you don't really get a lot of chance to work with such kind of great background and sets. And so for me, it was like, and I think a few times Sophie was like, yeah, we've had too much of that. Because you just want to use everything. You're just like, yeah, but that looks great, but that looks great. But we want to bring that in as well. And so I think little things like just walking through the market probably took us the longest to cut. Because again, we had to keep losing bits because we were kind of, putting too much in. So that was quite difficult. That was, yeah.
You just have to do a special cut just for the art department, just so they can be like, oh, yes, look at our set.
I think probably the first cut would be good at that, actually. I'll send that across, yeah.
So what scenes got changed the most, do you think, during the editing? What sort of ended up in the final cut most different to where it started?
I think, well, I know we did quite a lot for the fight sequence of like cutting and trying to mitigate some things so quicker. But I also think I remember in Chris's second episode, like there's the tavern scene where it was kind of like maybe adding extra pauses or extra cuts here, or there was one shot with Ren and Hunter, and they're together in a two-shot, and it's kind of a tension moment, and it was only used once at one point, and then we came back to him for, actually, that's a really long, nice shot of them in a tense moment, let's put more in. And so we put more of it in to then be like, right, let's hit this right moment, and then let's hit that moment, because there's a conflict going, and it's nice to see what's happening with all the characters rather than what's the two main conflict issues at the moment. And it's kind of like if you saw they're the two main characters and there's the conflict, but then like we're focusing on those main characters actually throughout the whole story, let's put them more in, and that made the scene more anxious. I think initially it was just like we were focusing on the other characters, thinking, oh, like, what's going on over here, let's completely focus on this, and then to tie it back up to the main characters was really a nice aspect to put in. And it made me realize that that needed to be in, because as soon as that put in, I was like, oh, I feel tense about this now. So,
yeah, building that tension there was important. What for you, Arthur? Can you think of anything that changed a lot?
I can't talk specifically, but I can talk generally.
Right.
Sophie is, as a director, she covers all bases. She doesn't just kind of work out what she wants happening in the scene. She's thinking about what's going to happen in the next episode, the next season. And so there was one scene where, a big reveal, which we won't go into specifics. And when I first cut it, I wasn't aware or thinking of all of the repercussions that scene will have in not just season 2, but season 3. And so when Sophie came in, like she always does, she had like an encyclopedic knowledge of what every beat in that scene is going to mean further down the line. And so that, I think that was the one that took the most recutting, because Sophie came in and said, oh, what you don't know is this, and this, and we want to do this, and we want to make sure we set this up for later down the line. And I think that was, that scene, I think, was probably, recut the most.
Sophie
was, but I can't tell you what it is, sorry.
No. Sophie was one of the few people that got to read the draft of season 3 script.
Oh, did she?
Before shooting season 2, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, because she said, "Look, I need to know so I can tell people, until the actors I'm working with, where it's going." And of course, we've since done several more drafts, and some of those things have changed. Hopefully not the main things.
You're back into the edit tomorrow, right?
Back in tomorrow.
Yeah, with all the changes.
It's an interesting balance to strike, and those the montage you mentioned, Kat, because of course there are actually montages in episodes 2 and 3, and because there was a little point around about September, where I was seriously considering writing and shooting some new scenes with Ren and Hunter, because we'd done some test screenings, and some of the feedback was people weren't quite sure what their relationship was, and so I can't say too much, but that was seriously considered. And actually, we solved the problem, or I hope we solved the problem. I think we solved the problem by making a number of small changes throughout, including just moving some things around in those montages, finding little looks, little moments. In fact, one of them, I'm pretty sure there's a moment of Hunter by a campfire that might have been after cut was called or before action was called, where there's a little look that we put in just to help things out slightly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cool. So I think that's enough talking about Ren. So what else are you guys up to? What are you working on next? What have you been working on lately, Arthur?
Oh, okay. I'll obviously wait for Kat. So I'm just finished cutting a feature-length comedy, which hopefully will come out. We're hoping that this year. Called It's the Blackness. It's kind of comedy about two black guys who go to Oxford University, and then when they get out with kind of shining honours, they can't get a job, and so it's kind of a comedy of how them trying to get a job, and so that's what I've recently been working on, and at the moment I'm currently cutting which I can't say too much about. I don't think the director, but I will say it's kind of like a Scottish fairy tale. And so that's a short film. So that's kind of a lot of fun at the moment. And I'm cutting that. And after that, I'm just about to start cutting another feature horror film. So kind of mixing it up a little bit with kind of comedy, fantasy, and so that's kind of what's coming up at the moment.
How about you, Kat?
I say we just kind of finished up editing a documentary. So we literally spent since, I think it was 2017, like I shot it as well with people, but 2017 all the way up to now, we've finally finished doing a documentary about a winemaker, and it was kind of have a take on like all the traditional films that you see about winemakers. You think they just focus on one aspect of like, how nice is the wine taste, basically. And we were like, no, let's focus on like the environmental aspects of it. And with the talent himself, he's actually quite a bit of a character, because he's talking about all these nonsensical things you think don't matter, and then along the line, actually, no, that matters a lot to winemaking. And so we've just finished finalizing the edit on that, and now I'm actually taking on some of the grade. And now I've got to now edit some of the promo stuff for it now, and be like, okay, we'll get rolling with it, and already pushing off to for like marketing and promotion. So that's now in the final stage, and it'll be good to see how that all pans out.
Fantastic.
Cool. A documentary takes so long. Even longer than
they do, don't they? Yeah.
Documentary is a whole other thing for editors, isn't it?
I mean, you're very much telling the story as a documentary editor, right? Like, I've never made a documentary. I don't know whether I'd even know where to start.
Yeah, there's
so
much
behind the scenes, but still
hard to comprehend.
Yeah. You could have got just such a lot of footage from so much filming, and then you're like, okay, how do we make a story out of all of this? How do we make this exciting? Yeah.
That's the difficult part, isn't it? I once started a documentary with a colleague, but we were trying to make it all ourselves. This is when we first started, and we were trying, and so it was very, very slow. And by the time we'd made the film, it was 5 years later, and the topic we were filming on was out of date. And so we literally told, "I'm really sorry, guys. This was, it's about anti-terror laws in the UK." They were like, "This would have been great 5 years ago." It was about anti-terror laws in the UK. We were kind of looking. Kind of after the 7/7 bombings and that, and there was some strong anti-terror laws that came in, which kind of really raised the hackles of a lot of human rights agencies, Amnesty, and that. And so we were making a documentary about how these laws were kind of formed and how but by the time we had finished it, the laws had changed and it was all kind of out of date. And so it's just kind of sitting on the shelf.
I wonder if you could
Yeah.
change it into the. I suppose one good thing about documentaries is sometimes you can take that footage and sort of twist and change it with a voiceover and stuff. I wonder if you could make it about laws that come and go, and the disruption of that or something. I don't know.
You're right. Yeah, no, you're right. Totally, Kate. I think that's what we've been approached by someone to make a retrospective look
Yeah.
at what happened with the laws. So it's not kind of an urgency. This is what's happening now. Oh my God, this and this. It's more like this is what happened, and this is kind of. So yeah. So hopefully we'll make something out of it because it was the first kind of film we ever shot. But yeah, it was like I say, it's back when you think, you know what, we don't need producers, we don't need all these people, we'll just make it ourselves, and then you realise you do need all these people. You know, well, not all these people, but you know, you do need a few other people rather than just you and your friend.
Definitely
You know,
helps.
so it's
sometimes you can't find them though, and you just do it anyway.
no, exactly. As long as you take a crack at it, I think. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome.
Fantastic. Well, thanks both of you so much for joining us tonight. It was really interesting to hear stories from the post-production side of Ren. I know everyone out there is always wondering, you know, what's happening, when's the series coming, and all that. And it's good to talk about some of the important work that goes on after the cameras have stopped rolling.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Well, thank you for having us. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It's lovely to
awesome.
talk about it again. Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Are we going back to chat?
Yeah.
Okay, so bye, guys. Thank you so much. We're all
thank
going to
you.
chat
Take care.
to
See you
everyone.
later.
Bye.
Bye. That was Kat Ashenden and Arthur Harrison, the editors of Ren the Girl with the Mark Season 2. Well, that's almost it for this month. I will just quickly say my usual little Patreon plug. Thank you to everyone who is backing us on there. You are making the series happen. If you're not on Patreon, there are loads of amazing benefits you are missing out on. Some of the things that have been on there recently are an exclusive video all about the title sequence. There are like unseen versions from season 1 that probably even Kate's forgotten about, and the new version for season 2 has exclusively been seen by the Patreons on that video. Okay, we've lost the chat here.
I clicked on
thank you
something
everyone who joined us in the chat. Anyway,
I see you.
Hopefully you haven't put any important questions up.
No, I'm looking.
Yeah, there was a festive short story called Good Spirits by Ash Finn. That's on Patreon as well. There's new short fiction every month. And t-shirts, yeah. There are now season 2 t-shirts, like Kanath t-shirts with the logo and the motto, Eye of Justice and Mouth of Truth.
I should probably get one. I wear the same t-shirts all the time.
Yeah, well, sign up to our
There we
Patreon
go.
at the market goer level or above, and you too can get regular Ren merch. And remember, you can also join for free as well if you want to just get that gateway drug and find out what's going on. So join us again next time on The Mouth of Truth. As ever, we will be back on the second Thursday of the month at 8 p.m. UK time. So that's February the 8th. And all being well, next time we will be joined by the Mouth of Truth and Eye of Justice himself, Mr. Richard Zeman, aka Commander Othon. So until then, have a great month, and we will see you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.